The school's history project has for quite a while had a concern to develop different types of history, different approaches of history, different styles and angles on history. For example, a longitudinal study, a depth study, local international studies. And as director of the project, this has been quite fruitful, I think, in having a close look at Key Stage 3, which has got a certain sameness to it. If you're going to do long periods of history, and we do in our GCSE course, chronology becomes extremely important to underpin all this. And I hope that the work that the project does can help to contribute to a further thinking within Key Stage 3 history about what its chronology is and what the course might be, and with to contribute a bit more variety, so that it hasn't got that sameness of approach through the 3 years. Sometimes fast forwards, 150 years in a lesson, sometimes extreme depth, wanting to spend a lesson on only a few days or a few weeks. And that's what makes for the variety that is so important in the SHP course, and I think has something to contribute within Key Stage 3. Let's talk about the themes then, first of all, because if you actually look at the topics that you do, they really come down to who rules, who's ruling, lives of ordinary people.
Yep.
There's a lot of war. History is full of war, but I mean, there's a war thing going on.
Yeah.
And there may be, I don't know, maybe something about empires and conquest. Perhaps that's part of the war theme. Apart from kings, governments, and ordinary people, what else they're going? I think there's an empires and war.
Yeah, and also this idea about I suppose it comes into the power idea that we were going for as well. This idea of religion being, in a sense, a structure of power or in conflict with power.
Well, I mean, let's just put this up in Romans.
Well, in Romans, there's two elements. There's kind of why did the empire. Where did the Roman Empire grow?
Okay, so that's going to be our empire thing.
So maybe the empire thing. In terms of the political, we're looking at sort of the government of Rome and how the Roman Empire was controlled.
All right. Okay, so we've got something on government in Rome.
Yeah.
Who rules? And then who rules? We're going to have kings, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, the odd queen, but kings.
Yeah.
Okay. And that focuses, I mean, the thing that unites these topics in your inquiry questions is problems, isn't it? Kings and barons, kings and church, Beckett, kings and people, just occasionally.
With the Peasants' Revolt. Yeah, certainly. And then
so that's sort of kings and problems.
Yeah.
And then the story sort of shifts in year 8, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To very different. We're still into kings, because we still... Perhaps monarchs, we must say now.
Yeah, and it's this idea about the kind of the who ruled, in a sense, or where the power was shifting to.
Yes.
So we do the section on the kind of the break with Rome, but also the Civil War issue.
Yes, that's why I was thinking, that the Civil War and the lead up to the Civil War, that kind of links together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we've got now kings, monarchs, still monarchs, but facing very different challenges from when it was barons or when it was power of church, because now they control the church.
Because of the change in social system, and that's why we're trying to build in that bit of kind of about people, because I think that there is, I suppose, more in the 19th century and the 20th century, but that influence of people.
Yes, that's right. That's why, as I say, I don't think the themes want to take over.
Right.
Because you do need the links between the themes, don't you? You're going to have to say, yes, that the kind of the church may well now be under the monarch's thumb, more or less. Yeah. But we've now got a different sort of society in the 17th century, and as you say, in the 19th, again a different. So, and that's linking with our lives of ordinary people, which is another of our big themes.
Yes.
Ordinary people.
Yeah.
So yes, he's making these links, but this is links between years, and what you've just said is a link between themes. Isn't it, really? And then it comes on into the we then have this sort of
the protest
gap. We then have this gap period from 1660 to 1820, where nobody does anything very much. Well, we could talk about fast forwards.
Yeah.
Actually, we might want to talk about fast forwards when we're doing chronology. But we get into the 19th century, and again, we've got huge social change,
and the impact that has on a very sort of monarchic, aristocratic government that's come out of this.
Yeah, and again, we do a little bit on the kind of the Reform Acts and those issues. But again, I think if things like the Reform Act was planted more carefully in this kind of idea of government or power, then I think we would get more out of that than we are doing at the minute.
I think I think that's what. I mean, we're coming up for a Key Stage 3 review.
Yeah.
This seems to be one of the things that could come out of that is possibly a rephrasing of the curriculum, or I think the way that that's written in units there encourages division.
Yeah, and
it doesn't encourage links,
and it encourages very much a chronological approach to an exact chronology approach rather than anything else.
I think in planning for progression, you need to be quite clear where kids are coming from, particularly into Key Stage 3, and I think there's more we could do to pick up and value the Key Stage 2 work that they've done, varied as it is. But there still are things that we could do, perhaps by getting clear on the vocabulary of learning, of writing, of source work that pupils do. But I think also then you need to do quite a careful audit of your Key Stage 3 scheme of work so that you're building up the skills, the concepts and understandings that you want to do over the 3 years, that there are no gaps, no long lacunae into which things fall apart and kids don't touch an idea for perhaps a year. They want to be gradually tackling source work, causation, interpretations in at least once a year each, so that they develop in their own way and they gradually become more skilled. This, of course, leads us into how you're going to assess this and how you're going to report back on assessment. But if there is a clear programme of progression through the key stage, then you stand a better chance, I think, of communicating that to the pupils.
Ruben, the Key Stage 3 is absolutely crucial stage, isn't it? Those 3 years in which the kids change a lot, and it's there for it's the only time when all children get a really concentrated dose of specialist taught history. What do you feel about what do you feel about the skills and their knowledge and understanding that they arrive with at the beginning of year 7? Do you diagnose, and what do you find?
Yeah, we do diagnose. We've started this year, or we started last year, doing a transition project, and therefore there's been transfer, for instance, between sort of 3 schools and what they've produced within year 6, and that gives us a good kind of idea. But we have, I think we have 35 feeder schools or whatever, so there's a big variance in what we're doing. And I think in general the pupils seem to have a strong understanding of causation, for instance, or themes, or sort of certain periods of time. I mean, I think in some of them the usual suspects appear just as they do here, in Key Stage 3. I think one of the things that we've been looking at is the idea of source inquiry at the start, in a sense. And what I mean is, I think at times there's let's do the content and then let's play about with sources at the end.
Yes.
And I think that's something we're all guilty of, but I think what we've been trying to do is to put that this is actually the process of history. We have to look at sources to build a picture. And obviously the picture is never complete and things like that on those particular issues, but I think that's something we've wanted to look at in a great deal more detail.
One could look at through progression and helping to make the 2 transitions work well is just the vocabulary that people use. What are the words that are used in years 5 and 6? Words not just in history lessons but in literacy lessons, which we should be able to pick up. With those literacy skills of reading between the lines, constructing different types of writing. We should, and I think, and on the whole, we don't. We don't. I mean, you don't. We don't. And it may be that there's a vocabulary issue here about we're not giving kids the triggers to get them to transfer what, after all, took place in a different lesson, a different school, in a different year, to a new situation in a secondary school. And then there's the vocabulary of GCSE, the arcane vocabulary of GCSE questions, and how actually understanding that is a huge part of success at GCSE.
Because I think, I mean, that's again sort of one of those sort of starters that we've been doing, is that idea of trying to act out a concept or trying to draw a concept.
Yes, like appeasement,
yeah, and the kind of on the Romans, for instance, about why did the Roman Empire expand? And we were kind of we learned the word altruism, and so I was going, this is something that you can go home and stun your parents and the dog with your new knowledge or whatever. But again, that's bringing them into some of those words about, you know, and trying to organise in that way, but making it concrete in their heads. But I think definitely that idea of the vocabulary that they've already developed in primary school, there's a rich reservoir there that we need to be making more of. I think definitely. And
one of the good things about the scheme of work is it's very clear about assessment targets for each unit, and they help to shape, don't they, the teaching and then the assessment of each. Did you also plan in this sort of spiral idea so that you revisit, I haven't added it up, but you revisit causation 2 or 3 times a year, or maybe, or evidence a couple of times a year?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at a matrix of kind of how far we were, you know, what we were covering and what assessments were covering, and we tried to revisit those. I mean, the example in the year 7 would be, why were the Roman army so successful? We grew the knowledge, because I think sometimes we're getting to this point that if you just do the card sort, which is never how it was meant, but I think sometimes you see that done, then it becomes a drag and drop exercise, really. So what we were wanting to do is we did do a card sort, but at the very end we wanted to kind of just sort of really grow the knowledge by looking at this source, looking at that source, doing a bit of narrative, those sorts of things, and then sort of putting in a little bit of scaffolding for varying groups. And then in the medieval section, then again, why did William win the Battle of Hastings? A similar multifactorial causation question, taking away more of the scaffolding for them to then apply the new knowledge, if you like, to a similar situation. And hopefully that would be us starting to, it would be...
And where does that go in years 8 and 9?
In year 9, where we look at causation within the Second World War, and then within year 8.
The progression is a more complex issue, more causes, more difficult concepts to deal with.
And also that kind of idea that, for instance, there's no easy fit, perhaps. I mean, even for instance, with the Battle of Hastings or with the Romans, there's perhaps no easy fit, but increasing complexity of them. And I think, for instance, why did the First World War take place again? We were very influenced by sort of a colleague who came into the school, showing about that it's not just about people, it's how the scene reacts upon the people. And again, that gave us that kind of thought, right, we need to re-look at that assessment again, and that was really interesting.
What's the policy in school on levels? Do you require to level everything that moves? Does the history department follow school policy?
Yeah, it does, please. We do, our assessments are, we're looking at a new structure, which is kind of traffic light sort of structure, either you're on target or whatever. We generally keep sort of levels for each year, basically, and how they're progressing. And the school takes account of those, twice or 3 times a year.
A year,
right. Yeah. And
I think one could live with that. I mean, the situations where people are doing it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times a term, then I think it, in our subject, doesn't make a lot of sense.
And also because we're not talking about the attainment targets being linear. I mean, that's the thing. I think somebody once said they were developed by a mathematician. You know what I mean? And perhaps mathematics is more of a linear kind of discussion.
Interesting, of course, that it was a mathematical model devised by Paul Black, who now is now very much into not levelling, but into assessment for learning, comments, not marks, and so on. So actually, I think in some ways he might be horrified by the way that.
And that's the thing, and because I think that, but it's the same with so many of the issues within history. It's within the teaching of history, or maybe all subjects, but that things are taken to their illogical conclusion nearly. You know what I mean? And again, I think that happens.
Yeah.